there's so many things to get into, but like the basics is really to promote elongation. So we're all fighting with gravity in this world, but especially with scoliosis, in that when the spine is curving and rotating, people are more likely to even be like losing more height over time. So really focusing on trying to find that elongation through the spine to not keep falling in that pattern of collapse. So working on breath and expansion is another big focus.
Welcome to the Carolina Senior Talk Podcast, your trusted source for all things related to senior living in the Carolinas. In each episode, we'll guide you through the best locations, offer advice on buying a home, and share tips on relocating within this beautiful region. Whether you're exploring new senior communities, considering a move, or looking to invest in your current dream home, we've got you covered. So sit back, relax, and get ready to discover everything you need to know about senior living in the Carolinas. Well, hello there, folks. Welcome again to another episode, another podcast. This happens to be podcast number 10, if you've been following along, of Carolina Senior Talk. This is where we talk about all things senior. Simple enough, right? Those topics could range from health to living in your current home. There's a lot of issues that we who are over this gray matter, over 60, have to deal with. Today's topic, however, is probably one of the more unique topics that I've ever run into. So let me just pose this question to you. Do you suffer from back pain? Do you have scoliosis, perhaps, that you have to wrestle with? Or have you had some surgery and you have spinal fusion and that's kind of holding you back? If those are yeses to any of those, stay tuned, because today's special guest is going to talk about these very, very issues. I'd like to introduce Miss Stacy Joyce, and she's with Spinal Fusion Yoga, and she is a back care specialist. She's also a certified yoga for scoliosis instructor, where she serves students with back concerns, back pain, and those who just really are seeking relief, enjoying more movement or improving their posture or reducing stress. There's a lot of benefits there. So, Stacy, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. What a great introduction. You really gave it all in a nutshell.
We're done. That's the end of our podcast. Well, before we get into it, I always ask people, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where did you come from before you came to the Carolinas?
So I was born outside of the Carolinas. So I was born in Wisconsin, but my family relocated to North Carolina when I was about 8 years old. My father's family's from the Carolinas. So this is where I grew up, was Chapel Hill, just down the road, through elementary, middle, high school. I actually graduated from UNC Charlotte. And after college, I left and, traveled and lived abroad. I was in the Peace Corps, ended up moving to New York City, then New Jersey. And about a year and a half ago, my family decided to come back to the Carolinas, and now we are in beautiful Lake Norman.
Awesome.
To be specific.
Welcome to the South. We too, a lot of people in this area are from somewhere else. So you came to the land of cheese. You lived in the land of restaurants up in New York and multicultural over there, and now you're in the South. So if you had to pick a cuisine, a Southern cuisine that you really latched onto, what would that be? What would you tell somebody who's coming from Wisconsin or New York when they're coming down here?
Oh gosh. Well, growing up in the South, biscuits are unique to the South. So you're not going to find, you maybe get your bagels up north, but you're going to get your biscuits down here. But like favorite things my grandmother always cooked was like fried cornbread.
Oh yeah.
And collard greens. It was like every holiday, like those were the staples, and those were like kind of the only things I cared about.
Awesome. Yeah. Collard greens. Man, I love collard greens. Yeah. My mom was from the South, and we grew up with a Southern cuisine for the most part, not always. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, welcome to the South. Welcome to Charlotte and Lake Norman. All right. Now, before we can proceed further, however, and I know you were worried about this, we kind of have our guests go through a gauntlet. And I'm sorry, it's a pass or fail type situation. Okay. So I'll try to make this as easy for you as possible. But there's a lot of seniors listening to this. And so we're going to hit you with a couple of trivia questions. And you get to pick which category the question is going to come from. So pop culture, television, music, movies, cars, news, or sports. What do you say?
Oh boy, is there a category called easy?
Ah,
I'll say pop culture. We'll
you're
see.
gonna go with pop culture. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. This one. Oh, these are fun. First question right out of the gate. Which park opened on July 17th, 1955, before you were born? A, Central Park in New York City. B, Disneyland in Anaheim. C, Yellowstone National Park. Or D, Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida.
Hmm. I'm gonna go with D.
D, Walt Disney World. Okay, now, and are you sure about that?
No, I'm not. My son's name starts with a D, so I went with D.
Okay, so using the D theme, there might be another alternative that might fit the bill, but you're really close.
Okay.
The,
C?
the answer is B, Disneyland in Anaheim, California.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got that mixed up. Yeah, gotcha.
All
Okay,
right.
great.
We're going to give that to you. All right. Now, here's somebody that was in the news all the time before your time, but you've heard about one of these individuals. And they retired from CBS Evening News in 1981. Retired from CBS Evening News in 1981. A, Walter Cronkite. B, Howard Cosell. C, Edward R. Murrow. And last but not least, Bob Woodward. D.
A?
Hey, ding, 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 ding. See, you won. You won.
Oh, wow. I'm shocked. Oh, wow. I'm gonna fall off my chair.
See, those things are fun. I love those things. All right, so let's talk a little bit about spinal fusion yoga. In a nutshell, what is spinal fusion yoga? It's a very unusual combination of services that you're offering there.
It is. We hear yoga all over the place, everywhere. But when you have something as systematic as a scoliosis in your body
Mm.
and you add on a surgery, you need to practice in certain ways that are respecting what's going on in your body. So it's really taking into consideration all the nuances due to the scoliosis and the spinal fusion, because ultimately, we have things that we want to promote and we have things that we do not want to promote. Our body has certain tendencies that it's going to fall into, and we're trying to identify those and move out of those. Maybe that's breathing, maybe that's posture. And then we also have to protect areas that we don't want to wear and tear even more. So if you have a surgery, especially with the fusion, you have areas that there is no movement.
Mhm.
So that means that above and below it, those discs are degenerating even faster. So you do what you can, if you know, to protect that area and hopefully prevent a need for, further surgeries. But at the same time, we all need movement. If we sit because we have a diagnosis, if we sit because we have a surgery, we're only going to feel worse and our health is going to deteriorate. And so yoga is just like a really great way to move and feel better and get exercise. And I love it. It's my passion. And that's why I love teaching this.
And very simply, scoliosis is nothing more than curvature of the spine, correct?
It's curvature of the spine and rotation as
Mhm.
well. So the spine doesn't just simply go into a C or an S-shaped curve. The vertebrae are also rotating with that curve. So we have, for example, ribs attached to our thoracic vertebrae. So if somebody has a scoliosis, especially in their thoracic, they may feel like, oh my gosh, I have this like big prominence on one side of my back because the whole rib cage is moving back.
Mhm.
And so there's different things that are happening in the shoulders or in the pelvis. It's really going to have an impact on the entire body, not just the spine.
Stacy, what was your motivation for getting into this specific arena?
So I was drawn to yoga. I took my first class just 2 years after my surgery. And I think it just felt safe and I wasn't scared because I didn't grow up an athlete. I wasn't into any sports. And
You had surgery for what?
I had surgery for my scoliosis when I was 16 years old.
Hmm.
So if your scoliosis goes beyond a certain curvature, generally it's somewhere around 50.
Mhm.
Surgery is recommended. And I was a teen, I was still growing, I was in constant back pain, and surgery was recommended. And I don't regret it. I think that I absolutely needed it and that it was helpful. So I had a fusion, meaning that they fused 11 bones meaning the vertebrae together.
Wow.
And then I have rods down my back. And the point of the surgery is to create stability, and so that it's not progressing. And we all hope after a surgery that the pain goes away. So yes, that takes a while, but eventually like it did, but there's definitely a lot of like work involved in there to keep the body feeling good.
Now, when you and I chatted earlier, you mentioned that you went through a lot of courses, and there were some individuals, some instructors that really were mentors, I guess, for you, as well as teaching you the trade, if you will.
Yeah. So honestly, I practiced yoga. I did a lot of just any videos, whatever it was, a book here or there. I moved to New York City. I was going to all these great studios in New York. And I never had a teacher that understood anything that had to do with scoliosis or spinal fusion. And I got to the point where I couldn't physically stay in an office job anymore. And I just had to do something different. And that's when I started my yoga teacher training. You start out, everybody does 200 hours. And then I did the advanced 300-hour program. And I chose to make a project to share with my group about scoliosis and spinal fusion. And that's what led me down the path to realizing, whoa, it turned my world upside down. I was like, oh my gosh, I am not practicing in any way that's taking into account my scoliosis or my spinal fusion. And luckily I lived in New York City, and I could seek out these specialized teachers and these specialized studios that I kind of knew existed, but I didn't prioritize because I didn't know the importance. You know, we hear about things, but we're like, oh, it's out of the way or whatever. And so I really had a moment where I felt like everything I learned was a waste. I shouldn't have been practicing this way. I felt like I was wasting my time. And then I had coming to terms where it was like, okay, but I have been practicing yoga, so I can change and I can start doing it in a way to protect my back. And I just decided then, like, I'm just going to work with people that don't have typical spines and still need to practice yoga. So in my way of thinking, there's enough yoga teachers around here to teach, typical spines. So I'm going to be the teacher for the, atypical.
I remember back in the day when yoga seemed so strange and foreign, and now it's everywhere. But I think it's more amazing the fact that it's gotten so prevalent that now we've gone into these specialties within yoga. And I think that's something that was my takeaway from talking with you, was that, wow, I mean, here we are. It's just a very specific niche within yoga alone. And how does yoga help scoliosis? What are the specifics there?
So there's so many things to get into, but like the basics is really to promote elongation. So we're all fighting with gravity in this world, but especially with scoliosis, in that when the spine is curving and rotating, people are more likely to even be like losing more height over time. So really focusing on trying to find that elongation through the spine to not keep falling in that pattern of collapse. And then also with that rotation, you have a lot of changes in, say, like the rib cage and where your breath is going and where there's not breath going. So working on breath and expansion is another big focus on yoga for scoliosis or spinal fusion. Also just calming the nervous system. I think we all need it.
Yeah.
We all have just like such busy lives. We're all trying to do so many things in our day. But with scoliosis, where, our nervous system isn't exactly firing the way that it is for everybody else, our body's just always kind of just trying to decipher, like, where is center? Where is my balance? Some people really struggle with their balance with scoliosis, and that's taxing and that's tiring. So it's like just having practices to de-stress can help so much tremendously with like pain levels, with like releasing muscle tension. So, somebody, if you're in pain, you don't need to be stretching. You need to be learning how to calm your nervous system and relax and just focus on breathing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What if somebody were suffering from, I don't know, sciatica? Would your yoga still be a benefit to them?
For sure. This topic comes up a lot in that maybe you had scoliosis, let's say, since childhood, but over the decades, there's like other things that creep in there. And usually at a certain point, if you're having an MRI or an X-ray and you get this report, there's multiple things going on.
Yeah.
So for example, with like sciatica, I mean, that could be coupled with like someone's scoliosis. So I would say that, it may come from like poor postural habits. So having a gentle practice that focuses on decompressing the spine, finding neutral curves, just improving mobility by doing gentle poses. So recognizing like what's good for you may be different versus somebody else, but figuring out what those things are. And, working on like legs and hips. So sometimes we think of like, oh, I'm a back care yoga teacher. I don't only talk about the back. So, the more that we can work on the legs and having strong hips, those are going to help relieve work on the low back. The more that we can work on like our mobility in our arms and our strength and our shoulders, like that's going to help our thoracic spine. So there's so many ways to support, the low back and the hip area. So, I mean, sciatica would definitely be one of those that can find relief in yoga.
You work on more gentle poses, if you will. So obviously there's a lot of emphasis on that, as opposed to other forms of yoga, which are probably not good for the situation, correct?
Yeah, I would say that everything I focus on is gentle. It depends upon the student, how long they practice, where they are, if they're in discomfort. Starting out, I would not focus on strengthening poses. The focus initially would be on your postural awareness, knowing like what it is that you're trying to do here. And then over time, you're almost trying to like remap your body. Then you want to strengthen a posture that's like a positive one. I don't want to say like, oh, you're slumping in your chair. Okay, like let's strengthen your back in that position. That's like, no, like let's sit up straight. Let's stack the rib cage over the pelvis, like thinking about all these kind of cues and maintaining them. So, people can have a lot going on in their back and they can still be very strong. But unlike, I would say, a typical class that you might see in like a gym or a yoga studio, a lot of those are called like flow. And it's a lot of like quicker movements just with the breath. It's not so much, there's not much time given to say like focus on alignment or using props. So props, I mean, I use the wall, I'll use yoga blocks, I'll use chairs, like I'll use blankets. I use all sorts of things. And these are ways to enhance the practice and make it, sometimes it's like a form of assistance, but sometimes it's a form of like feedback of like, where's my body in space? If that makes sense.
Sure. I've gone through a yoga class before, and I can't say I passed with flying colors. It was turns out I was an intermediate class, and that was a big mistake.
Oh, those words can be tricky. Intermediate can be like, very advanced. Yeah.
Oh my
People
gosh.
call themselves a beginner for many years.
Yeah. So now the majority of your clientele are seniors, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And, I think that happens for a variety of reasons. I think that many people, whether they're younger and just trying to get through school or they're raising kids, they put their knees on the bottom of the totem pole. So I'll hear from people, they want to do things, but they're like, there's cheerleading practice or there's this or that or whatever it is. So I do find a lot of people, I mean, a couple people, it's like, oh, I retired 2 days ago. It's like I was on the list. It's like they want to enjoy the retirement, but now they know like, okay, I have time. I want to focus on me. I want to get back to the activities that I used to love. Yeah. I don't want to start feeling this way. I want to start moving more. Now I'm not glued to my desk job, whatever it may be. So I do work with mostly senior age.
And what would a session look like? Are you in a class or is it one-to-one? Is it virtual? How does that look like typically?
All of the above. So I do offer private sessions one-on-one that could be in person if somebody is in the area or they're going to be traveling through the area. And I also work virtually. So some people will even do both. I have a client currently, she's coming from South Carolina. So just to not make that drive every week, in between, she can do something virtually. Besides private one-on-one sessions, I also offer a couple group classes. So sometimes people just want to like start out, they want to get a feel of like, what is this? I just want to like know some poses, and then they might want to join a group class, or, they might decide that they're motivated to start practicing on their own. So it's really up to the individual.
So in person, virtual, very personalized, it sounds like, as well.
Yeah. So if it's like, let's say it's in person, or a private, really, whether it's in person or virtual, the first appointment is really like getting to know your back. And it may sound kind of funny, but a lot of people don't realize what's going on back there. They have no idea what it looks like. I've even had people come to me and they have their full reports, and they came for me saying that they had one back condition. And I'm like reading the report and I'm like, did you know you have scoliosis? They didn't even know, because their doctor probably only focused on one condition at their appointment. So if people don't have x-rays, that's okay. Like, we'll take pictures, but it's really like having a mental idea of like what it looks like and what that means. So when I refer to words, especially regarding convexity, concavity, things that are very specific to scoliosis, it makes sense to somebody.
Is there a particular story or a particular patient that just kind of stands out where you really have been able to bring value and transform their life significantly that you'd like to share?
Well, I think I've transformed my own life, but speaking of clients, so I have like one dear client, and she's a really good friend of mine. And she came to me about 2 years after her husband had passed. And she used to be very active with her husband. She used to go sailing, golfing, all sorts of things. And she just stopped everything once he had passed. And she knew that she wanted to get back to those things. And she decided to start with yoga. And it really like changed her mood. It changed like how she wanted to even like choose which foods to eat, how she was like nourishing herself, like just overall, it was like very motivational for her. She got back to golf. I think it was like around her birthday. She booked a sailing trip, and, she wasn't managing the boat, but like she went out and she was like, I was around and moving around on the boat and sitting here and sitting there, and she did fine. And, little things like that. It's like, those are huge milestones for someone. And so like, that was very motivational to, help somebody like reach their goals.
Yeah. That's amazing. That is amazing. So if you had to summarize the overall benefits of yoga for seniors, or anybody for that matter, what would be the top 5, 6, 10 things that you would share with us?
Yeah, I feel like we could have like part 2, 3, and 4. Like I could just go on. So it's hard to like pare it down. But if I could think of like, thinking of like a list of like some of the top things that come to mind, is just, first of all, just improving quality of life. For example, with that last story, it wasn't just about, and this client actually was like, at one point she said, I can reach things out of my cupboard that I couldn't reach without a step stool. So it's just improving overall your quality of life, whether it's your independence, like being able to take care of yourself, but yeah, being able to reach something out of a cupboard, being able to drive yourself around, like not being so dependent upon somebody else. And with that is also the cognitive benefits. So there are studies that, even for somebody who may be at risk for, say, like Alzheimer's, that there's aspects of yoga that are very beneficial for the brain. So it might be like the training and like the focus and the intention, the embodiment, the positive thinking, the breath work, things like that. I think we put a lot of emphasis on like the physical things, but there's a lot of things below the surface that we can't see that could become from our yoga. And the second one, and this really rings true for me, is remembering that there is movement. So I have a pretty large portion of my spine, and sometimes I feel like there's like a cinder block there, like there's no movement. But in yoga, there's no end goal. We're not trying to make any certain shape. It's remembering that there is movement. Even if you had a surgery, just feeling like, okay, maybe I can breathe a little bit differently. A huge one, especially for senior population, is getting that practice to work on balance and coordination in a safe way. I looked this up recently, and according to the CDC, I think it was like last year was like 36 million falls in elderly population, senior population, and 1 in 5 results in a broken bone.
Mm-hmm.
So we practice falling. We may still fall, but we may fall a little bit better, if that makes sense.
Right.
So another one, and this kind of ties in, is like just the wrist strength. Like, how much time are you spending a day bearing weight in your wrist? Probably none. And that's important because, like, let's say you do fall, you want to catch yourself, or let's say you end up on the floor, you want to get up. Like, that wrist strength and just the practice of moving around like that can be so beneficial. So nobody ever feels like they're stuck.
Yeah.
So I have a few more. Is that okay?
Go for it.
All right. Generally, yoga is just a great low impact exercise. So, there's a couple things that are definitely, on the radar at a certain age, such as like osteoporosis. So you'd really want like more low impact. So yoga is great for that. Reducing stress and anxiety. This is also really important for helping to reduce depression. And yoga and really any kind of movement is just going to be a mood booster. I mentioned this before, but combating gravity. So our posture wants to slouch and sink with age or through the day or through dehydration. So we're really trying to like build awareness in like working on like getting that rib cage away from the pelvis, keeping that space. It's so good for your organs. It's so good for your breathing. And I would say like the relieving aches and pains. We're all living in an aging body. There's going to be aches and pains. So we just got to know, like, well, what do we do when this happens? What's your go-to when your low back hurts? I would like to teach you ways to do something instead of like popping a pill. Let's just say there's a time and place for that. But, maybe there's something like easy you could do for like 10 minutes in relaxation. And I would say, like, lastly, just treating yoga as like a gateway exercise. So I have men who have come to me who are like delivery drivers. They never knew yoga. And they just are like, I just don't want to be stiff. I just want to get back to doing whatever else it is that I want to do in my life. And for some people, that means like, I want to cook Thanksgiving dinner for my family and stand. And
stand the whole time, right?
Yeah.
That's good motivation, right?
So I love this topic, but like, yeah, those would be like some top things that come to mind.
So what's on the horizon for you? You're deeply invested in this and doing a wonderful job with this, but this is not the end for you. What else is on your horizon?
So for sure, I'm expanding into training to be a Scolio Pilates practitioner. And so I plan to finish that training next year. So some people really like to practice Pilates. There's a thing called a reformer. So you're not necessarily getting on or ever need to get onto the floor. I'm really excited about that training. And I'm also co-hosting a Fusions retreat next year in Vancouver Island in May. So I'm really excited to do something like that, because a big part of what I believe in and that I like to promote is like the sense of community and bringing people together. And that when we have this condition, whatever it may be, we might feel like really alone because we look around and our friends don't know what we feel. So really bringing people together, and that's how we're going to heal ourselves, is by like sharing what's working for us and, learning from each other.
Excellent. Awesome. So if somebody wanted to engage your services, maybe they have a family member or they themselves wanted to call you up and ask more, or maybe schedule a session with you, how would they do that?
So through my website, somebody can book a call. I'll give you my phone number now, but I think like that's the best way. I mean, someone can send a message, but it's always going to start with like a phone call and seeing like what is their goal, what is it that they would like to do to start out, and then we just go from there. And
that's spinalfusionyoga.com is the website.
Yes, so my website is spinalfusionyoga.com, and if somebody wants to give me a call, that phone number is 704-659-1377.
Awesome. And in case you didn't write that down fast enough, listeners, we will have it posted at the tail end of this, if not below each of the photos. So Stacy, thank you very much. This has really been a helpful session, and I hope the listeners really get a lot out of this. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's not always, listen, I do real estate. I help people sell homes, buy homes, but it's not about that. Some people just need to take care of themselves and their health. And so if we're bringing value, then we've accomplished our goal. Stacy, thank you very much. And I hope some people reach out to you. Thank you.
Thank you for doing what you do. I appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to the Carolina Senior Talk podcast. We hope you found today's episode both informative and helpful. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave us a review and share it with those who might benefit from our advice. If you or anyone you know is looking to buy, sell, or relocate to the Carolinas, or you simply want to know how much equity you have in your home, be sure to contact me at www.carolinaseniortalk.com. Until next time, we wish you the best on your senior living journey in the Carolinas. Take care. Thank you for listening once again, and talk to you soon.